The stars had never seemed so close before. Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her hand against the cool metal of the observation deck window and watched the alien ships move through space like graceful dancers. The Zephyrian vessels were beautiful things, all smooth curves and gleaming silver surfaces that caught the light of distant suns. "Hard to believe this is really happening," said Commander Torres, joining her at the window. His voice carried the same wonder that Elena felt. After 300 years of dreaming about life among the stars, humanity had finally found friends out here in the vast darkness. The Zephyrian delegation had arrived at Earth 6 months ago, bringing gifts of technology and promises of partnership. Their leader, Ambassador Kethvar, spoke perfect English and smiled often. He explained that the Zephyrian Confederation was a peaceful alliance of 12 different species who worked together to keep this part of the galaxy safe and prosperous. "Your people show great promise," Kethvar had told the United Earth Council during the first meeting. "We have watched your progress with interest. You have overcome your wars and united your world. This is rare. Most species destroy themselves before they reach the stars. The offer seemed too good to be true. The Zephyrians would share their faster-than-light travel technology, their advanced medicines, and their energy systems. In return, they asked for friendship, trade agreements, and a small contribution to the Confederation's peacekeeping forces. Earth would become the 13th member of their alliance." Elena remembered the celebrations that followed the signing of the Terran Accords. Every major city on Earth had parties in the streets. Children drew pictures of spaceships and alien friends. The news channels called it the greatest day in human history. That was 50 years ago. Elena had been just a child then, drawing her own pictures of adventures among the stars. Now she commanded her own exploration vessel, the UES Discovery, searching for new worlds where humans could build homes. The partnership had worked exactly as promised. Human colonies now dotted 43 star systems. Earth's population had grown to 12 billion people, all living longer and healthier lives thanks to Zephyrian medical technology. Human ships traveled between the stars as easily as ancient sailors had crossed Earth's oceans. Elena walked through the corridors of her ship, past crew members from a dozen different human colonies. There was Singh from New Mumbai, Chen from the mining world of Kepler 442, and Okafor from the agricultural planet New Kenya. Humanity had spread across the galaxy like seeds on the wind, but lately some of those seeds had been sending troubling reports. "Captain," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communications station, "we're getting another message from the Titan Mining Collective." "Same complaint as before," Elena frowned. The Titan Collective was one of humanity's most successful ventures, a group of asteroid mining stations that provided rare metals to the entire Confederation. But their reports had become increasingly worried over the past year. "What are they saying now?" "They're required to send 90% of their platinum and titanium to Zephyrian shipyards. The Confederation Council says it's for essential infrastructure projects, but the miners never see what gets built with their materials." This wasn't the first such report. The farming colony on Harvest had complained that they were required to send most of their food production to Zephyrian worlds, leaving barely enough to feed their own people. The research station at Proxima had reported that all their breakthrough discoveries in physics and engineering were immediately classified by Confederation security. Elena had tried to discuss these concerns with Zephyrian officials, but their answers were always the same. The Confederation had many member species to support. Resources had to be shared fairly. Young species like humanity needed guidance to avoid dangerous technologies. "Captain," said Dr. Kim from the science station, "I've been analyzing the patrol assignments we've received from Confederation Command. There's a pattern you should see." Elena joined the young scientist at her workstation. Dr. Kim had been tracking human military deployments across Confederation space for her doctoral thesis on interspecies cooperation. "Look at this data," Dr. Kim said, pointing to a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked locations where human peacekeeping forces had been stationed. Human units are consistently assigned to the most dangerous sectors: border conflicts, piracy suppression, first contact with hostile species. Elena studied the display. The pattern was clear once she saw it. Human forces were spread thin across the galaxy's most troubled regions, far from human colonies and Earth itself. "What about casualty rates?" Elena asked. Dr. Kim's expression grew grim.
Human units suffer losses at 3 times the rate of other Confederation forces.
Command always explains it as humans being eager to prove themselves or lacking experience in galactic warfare. A chill ran down Elena's spine. She had lost friends in those distant conflicts, good people who died fighting pirates or stopping wars between alien species. She had always assumed their sacrifices were necessary for galactic peace. "There's something else," Dr. Kim continued. "I've been monitoring Confederation shipping routes. Human colonies are always established in systems rich with resources, but located far from major trade routes and military bases. We're isolated." Elena stared at the galactic map, seeing it with new eyes. Every human world was like an island, surrounded by vast, empty space. If something happened to Earth, the colonies would be cut off from each other. "Captain," Rodriguez called from communications. "Priority message from Confederation Command. We're ordered to investigate a distress signal near the Veil Nebula, possible pirate activity." Elena looked at the coordinates. The Veil Nebula was on the very edge of explored space, weeks away from the nearest Confederation base. Another dangerous assignment for a human crew. But as the Discovery changed course toward the nebula, Elena made a decision. She would investigate the distress signal as ordered, but she would also do some investigating of her own. There were too many coincidences, too many convenient explanations. The journey to the nebula took 2 weeks. During that time, Elena quietly gathered more information. She had Dr. Kim analyze every piece of data they could access about Confederation policies. She had Rodriguez monitor all frequencies for unusual communications. She even asked her engineer, Chief Petty Officer Walsh, to examine the Zephyrian technology that powered their ship. "It's strange, Captain," Walsh reported. "The power systems they gave us are advanced, sure, but they're also limited. There are built-in restrictions that prevent us from modifying the engines for higher speeds, or the weapons for greater power. It's like they gave us a car but locked the hood." When they finally reached the coordinates of the distress signal, they found something unexpected. A damaged Zephyrian courier ship drifting in space, its crew dead. The ship's computer systems were still partially functional. "No signs of pirate attack," reported Chief Torres after examining the wreckage. "This looks like a navigation error. They flew too close to a gravity well and got caught in tidal forces." Elena felt a mixture of relief and suspicion. If this was just an accident, why had Confederation Command sent them all the way out here to investigate pirates? "Captain," Dr. Kim called urgently from the sensor station. "I'm detecting encoded transmissions from that courier ship. The computer is still trying to complete its last message delivery." Elena authorized Dr. Kim to decrypt the messages, thinking they might contain important information about the ship's mission. What they found instead changed everything. The messages were military communications between Zephyrian commanders, discussing something called the Terran Solution. Elena listened in growing horror as alien voices debated the timeline for population reduction and resource optimization regarding human colonies. One message was particularly clear. "The human breeding rate remains problematic. Recommend accelerating deployment of human units to high-casualty sectors. Estimate 40% population reduction achievable within 20 years through military attrition alone." Another voice responded, "Agreed. Phase 2 can begin once human industrial capacity reaches target levels. Their technology development must be strictly controlled until integration is complete." Elena's hands trembled as she heard her own species discussed like livestock. The final message made their intentions unmistakable. The humans continue to believe they are partners rather than assets. This naive trust serves our purposes well. Once their usefulness peaks, final implementation should proceed smoothly. Unlike the Vorthak, humans seem incapable of recognizing exploitation until it becomes extermination. Elena ordered all evidence copied and secured. Her crew worked in stunned silence, processing the betrayal they had uncovered. For 50 years, humanity had trusted the Zephyrians completely. They had followed every law, paid every tribute, and sent their young people to die in Confederation wars. All of it had been a lie. As the Discovery raced back toward human space, Elena tried to contact Earth and the other colonies, but their communications were being jammed. When they finally broke through the interference, the messages they received made her blood run cold. Zephyrian fleets were moving toward every major human world simultaneously. The excuse was a manufactured crisis about a rogue human colony that Elena's ship shook violently as another explosion lit up the darkness outside. Through the viewscreen, she could see the orbital defense platforms around Earth burning like fallen stars. The beautiful Zephyrian ships she had once admired were now delivering death with precise calculated strikes. "All stations report," she shouted over the noise of emergency alarms. "Hull integrity holding at 60%, called Chief Walsh from engineering. "But we can't take much more of this." Elena gripped her command chair as the Discovery dove behind the cover of Earth's moon. Around them, the remnants of the human defense fleet fought desperately against overwhelming odds. Ships she had served with, commanded by people she had known for years, were dying one by one. The attack had begun 12 hours ago. Just as Elena's ship had arrived back in the Sol system, she had tried to warn Earth Command about the Zephyrian deception, but it was already too late. The Confederation fleets had been moving into position for weeks. "Captain," Rodriguez called from communications, his voice tight with strain, "I'm getting fragmentary reports from the colonies. New Geneva is under attack. Kepler Station has gone dark. The farming worlds are being hit by orbital bombardment." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the human families on those distant worlds, children who had grown up believing the Zephyrians were their protectors, parents who had named their babies after Confederation heroes, all of them now facing the truth in the worst possible way. "What about the fleet?" she asked. "Admiral Chen's battle group at Proxima is trying to rally a defense, but they're outnumbered 5-1. The first colonial fleet was destroyed at New Mumbai. The third fleet—" Rodriguez paused, checking his instruments. "The third fleet was on patrol in the Outer Rim. They might still be intact." Elena nodded grimly. The third fleet had been sent on another of those convenient missions that kept human forces away from important locations. Now she understood why the Zephyrians had been so eager to scatter human military units across the galaxy. A new voice crackled over the emergency frequency. It was Admiral Chen, broadcasting from somewhere in the chaos around Earth. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Earth Command has been destroyed. The orbital shipyards are gone, estimated casualties in the billions." His voice broke slightly before he continued. "The Zephyrians are broadcasting surrender terms. They want all remaining human forces to lay down weapons and submit to protective custody." Elena felt sick. Protective custody. The same words the Zephyrians had used when they conquered the other 6 species Dr. Kim had found mentioned in those stolen files. "Sir," Elena transmitted back, "this is Captain Vasquez of the UES Discovery. I have intelligence about Zephyrian intentions. They never plan to let us survive as an independent species." "Understood, Captain. All ships fall back to Rally Point Delta. We need to regroup and assess our situation." Rally Point Delta was a secret location in the asteroid belt, known only to senior human officers. As the survivors of Earth's defense gathered there, Elena shared what she had learned from the courier ship's files. The truth was worse than any of them had imagined. The Zephyrians had done this before, not once but 6 times over the past 1,000 years. Each time they would approach a young species with offers of friendship and alliance. They would help that species expand into space, develop technology, and build a civilization. Then, when the species had become useful enough and vulnerable enough, they would harvest everything of value and eliminate or enslave the survivors. The Vorthak were first, Elena explained to the gathered ship captains, a warrior species that the Zephyrians turned into shock troops before exterminating them. The Selenites were master engineers. The Crystalline Collective were living computers. All gone now. Captain Morrison of the heavy cruiser Defiance spoke up. "What made them decide to move against us now?" Elena consulted the stolen files. "Human population reached critical mass. Our industrial capacity hit their target numbers. They had extracted everything they needed from our research. And—" she paused, reading the cold calculations in the alien documents. "They were getting worried that we might start asking questions about the resource allocations and casualty rates. So we were getting too smart for our own good," said Captain Park of the destroyer Swift. "Justice. Too smart and too numerous," Elena confirmed. "The files mention that humans breed faster than any species they've previously conquered. They wanted to reduce our numbers before we became harder to control." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from his flagship New Hope. Behind him, Elena could see damage control teams working frantically to repair battle damage. "I've been monitoring Zephyrian communications," the Admiral reported. "They're not trying to occupy our worlds. They're sterilizing them. Population centers, spaceports, communications arrays, all targeted for complete destruction. Elena felt a cold rage building in her chest. This wasn't war. It was extermination disguised as pacification. "Sir, what are our options?" asked Captain Morrison. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that Elena had never heard before. "We have perhaps 50 ships scattered across 3 star systems, maybe 20,000 military personnel total. The Zephyrians have over 1,000 ships in their fleets with millions of troops. Earth's population has been reduced from 12 billion to perhaps 2 billion in the last 12 hours. Our colonies are being systematically destroyed." The numbers were overwhelming. Elena looked around at the faces of her fellow captains on the communication screens. She saw the same realization in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity was dying. However, Admiral Chen continued, and Elena heard something new in his voice, something hard and unforgiving. "The Zephyrians have made several critical errors. First, they assume we will either surrender or scatter like frightened animals. Second, they believe their intelligence about human psychology is complete and accurate. Third, they think 50 years of friendship has made us soft." Elena straightened in her chair. She was beginning to understand what the Admiral was suggesting. "Sir, are you proposing we continue resistance?" "Captain Vasquez, for 50 years we've served in their military. We've studied their tactics, their technology, their political structure. We've seen their ships, their bases, their supply lines. We know which species in their confederation are willing partners and which ones were conquered like us." Elena's mind raced as she processed this information. The Admiral was right. Humanity hadn't just been giving the Zephyrians tribute and service. They had been learning. More importantly, Admiral Chen continued, "We know something they don't expect us to know. We understand exactly what they are and what they've done. They think we'll react like a defeated military force. But this isn't a military defeat. This is genocide, and humans respond very differently to genocide than they do to military defeat." Elena felt something shift inside her chest. The grief and shock were still there, but they were being joined by something else, something that burned cold and steady. "What are your orders, sir?" "All ships will scatter immediately. No 2 vessels travel together. Make for the deep space caches we've established for long-range exploration. Avoid all contact with Zephyrian forces. Begin Phase 1 of Operation Lazarus." Elena had never heard of Operation Lazarus, but she could guess what it meant. Resurrection from the dead. "Sir, Phase 1 parameters? Survival and intelligence gathering. We stay alive, we watch our enemies, and we learn everything we can about their capabilities and weaknesses. The Zephyrians have just taught humanity a lesson they didn't intend to teach." "What lesson is that, sir?" Admiral Chen's smile was unlike anything Elena had ever seen on a human face. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized it was still alive after being ambushed. "They've taught us that mercy is weakness, that trust is foolishness, and that the only way to ensure your species' survival is to eliminate threats completely and permanently. It's a lesson we'll remember, Captain, and eventually we'll have an opportunity to demonstrate how well we've learned it." As Elena's ship departed Rally Point Delta and headed for the dark spaces between the stars, she looked back one last time at the Sol system. Earth was a wounded blue dot surrounded by the debris of human civilization. But it was still there, still spinning, still home to 2 billion human beings who would remember this day. The Zephyrians thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They thought the survivors would either die quietly in the cold of space or eventually surrender and accept slavery. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Elena floated in the observation bubble of Research Station Echo, hidden deep inside the Horsehead Nebula. Through the swirling gas and cosmic dust, she could see the lights of construction teams working on humanity's latest secret. It had been 1 year since the false peace, as humans now called the Zephyrian betrayal, and the survivors had been busy. "Dr. Kim, show me the latest reports," Elena said into her communication device. The young scientist's face appeared on Elena's personal screen. Dr. Kim looked older now, her eyes carrying the weight of loss and purpose. She had lost her entire family when New Geneva was destroyed, but she had turned her grief into something more dangerous than the Zephyrians could have imagined. "We've made significant progress, Captain. The reverse engineering project is ahead of schedule. We now understand not just how their technology works, but why it's designed the way it is." Elena drifted over to the nearest construction site. where human engineers were assembling something that looked like a Zephyrian ship, but felt completely different. The hull was sleeker, the weapons more integrated, the power systems more efficient. The beauty of their technology, Dr. Kim continued, is that it was designed to be easily understood by the species they conquered. They wanted us to be able to maintain and operate their equipment, but not improve upon it. The built-in limitations we discovered were intentional. Elena nodded. It made perfect sense. Give your slaves tools that work but can't be modified. Keep them dependent on you for upgrades and improvements. Except the Zephyrians had underestimated human curiosity and engineering ability. What about the weapon systems? That's the interesting part. Zephyrian weapons are designed for conquest, not destruction. They want to capture infrastructure intact. Our weapon, Dr. Kim paused and Elena saw something cold in her expression. Our weapons are designed for a very different purpose. Elena understood. The Zephyrians fought to conquer and control. Humans were now building weapons to destroy completely. A new voice crackled over the station's communication system. Captain Vasquez, this is Colonel Torres. Please report to Command Center Alpha. Elena pushed off from the observation bubble and glided through the station's corridors. Research Station Echo was one of dozens of hidden facilities that humanity had constructed in the past year. Each one was built inside an asteroid, a gas giant's moon, or the heart of a nebula where Zephyrian sensors couldn't find them. The command center was a vast cavern carved from solid rock, filled with holographic displays showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked known Zephyrian positions. Blue dots showed human hideouts. Yellow dots indicated targets for future operations. Colonel Torres was now General Torres, though military ranks seemed less important these days. What mattered was that he commanded the Terra Liberation Front, and the TLF had grown far beyond what any of them had expected. Elena, good. I want you to see this. Torres gestured to a large display showing shipping routes throughout Zephyrian space. Our intelligence network has identified a pattern in their supply lines. Elena studied the display. The Zephyrians moved vast amounts of resources between their worlds, but the routes were predictable. They used the same hyperspace lanes, the same refueling stations, the same scheduling systems they had developed over centuries of peaceful expansion. They're vulnerable, Elena realized. More than vulnerable. They're completely dependent on those supply lines. The Confederation spans thousands of light years, but it's held together by a transportation network that assumes no one would dare attack it. Elena smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had made their empire too big and too comfortable. They had never faced an enemy that could strike anywhere in their territory without warning. Sir, what about their client species? Are any of them potential allies? Torres highlighted several star systems on the display. Our agents have made contact with resistance groups among the Corvin, the Hive Workers, and the Silicon Federation. It turns out we're not the first species to figure out what the Zephyrians really are. This was news to Elena. They have other enemies? Not enemies exactly, prisoners. The Corvin were conquered 200 years ago. Their civilization was broken up and scattered across the galaxy to serve as Zephyrian auxiliary forces. The Hive Workers are the survivors of a species that was mostly exterminated 50 years before they found us. The Silicon Federation exists only because the Zephyrians need their computational abilities. Elena felt a surge of hope. Humanity wasn't alone in this fight. However, Torres continued, most of these species are broken. Centuries of oppression have made them afraid to resist. They need to see that victory is possible before they'll risk joining us. So we need to prove that the Zephyrians can be beaten. Exactly. Which brings me to why I called you here. We're ready to begin Phase 2 of Operation Lazarus. Elena had been expecting this. Phase 1 had been about survival and preparation. Phase 2 would be about making the Zephyrians pay. Torres led her to a smaller briefing room where Admiral Chen was waiting. The old man looked tired but determined. Behind him, Elena could see the faces of other human commanders from across the galaxy, appearing on communication screens. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Chen began, it's time to announce our presence to the galaxy. For 1 year, the Zephyrians have believed that humanity was finished. Their intelligence reports describe us as scattered refugees who will either die out or accept servitude within another few years. Elena saw grins on the faces of the other commanders. The Zephyrians were about to receive a very unpleasant surprise. Operation Prometheus will begin in 72 hours. Chen continued. Simultaneous strikes against Zephyrian installations in 37 star systems. Not random attacks, but coordinated operations designed to demonstrate our capabilities. Elena studied the target list that appeared on her screen. These weren't just military targets. They included research facilities, government buildings, communication centers, and resource processing plants. The message would be unmistakable. Nowhere in Zephyrian space was safe. Captain Vasquez, Chen said, you'll be leading strike team. 7 against the Zephyrian research complex at Tau Ceti. Your mission is to capture their genetic engineering data and destroy their biological weapons development program. Elena felt her heart race. Tau Ceti was deep inside Zephyrian territory, protected by multiple defense platforms and patrol fleets. A year ago, such a mission would have been suicide. Now, with their new ships and weapons, it was merely extremely dangerous. Sir, what about casualties? Civilian populations? Chen's expression grew serious. Our intelligence indicates that all Zephyrian civilian installations are actually military facilities using enslaved labor from conquered species. Priority targets include the liberation of any prisoners we can safely extract. Elena nodded. The humans weren't becoming monsters, but they were becoming something the Zephyrians had never faced before. An enemy that understood exactly what kind of creatures they were fighting. Over the next 72 hours, Elena prepared her team and her ship for the mission. The UES Discovery had been completely rebuilt using improved human technology. It was faster than any Zephyrian vessel, more heavily armed than ships twice its size, and equipped with stealth systems that made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Her crew had changed too. They moved with the quiet efficiency of people who had lost everything and found something worth fighting. For us, Dr. Kim worked at the science station, with the focused intensity of someone who had turned her grief into a precision instrument. Chief Torres commanded the tactical systems with the calm expertise of a man who had learned to kill without hesitation. Captain, reported Lieutenant Martinez from the navigation station, we're approaching the Tau Ceti system. Sensors show standard Zephyrian patrol patterns. 3 defense platforms, 2 patrol cruisers, minimal alert status. Elena smiled coldly. The Zephyrians still believed their space was secure. They were about to learn otherwise. All stations prepare for Operation Prometheus. In exactly 18 minutes, we remind the galaxy that humanity is very much alive. As Elena's ship slipped through the outer system toward its target, she thought about the message they were about to send. For 1 year, the Zephyrians had congratulated themselves on solving the human problem. They had recorded the conquest as another successful integration of a primitive species. But humanity had spent that year doing something the Zephyrians never expected. They had learned. They had adapted. They had grown stronger in the dark spaces between the stars. Soon, very soon, the Zephyrians would discover that their latest conquest had become their greatest mistake. They had tried to turn humanity into slaves and servants. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. They had created an enemy that would never stop fighting, never surrender, and never forgive. An enemy that had learned their lessons well and was ready to begin teaching some lessons of its own. The explosion that destroyed the Zephyrian research facility at Tau Ceti could be seen from orbit. Elena watched through her ship's sensors as 3 years of careful planning came together in a moment of perfect destruction. Around the galaxy, 36 other human strike teams were sending the same message to their former oppressors. Target eliminated, reported Chief Torres from the tactical station. All research data has been downloaded. Dr. Kim's team recovered the genetic samples from their biological weapons program. Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on something more important than the destruction below. Martinez, show me the Corvin fleet positions. The navigation officer highlighted several ships on the sensor display. 3 Corvin destroyers had been escorting a Zephyrian supply convoy through this system when Operation Prometheus began. Elena had been watching them carefully during the attack. Sir, Dr. Kim called from her station. I'm detecting unusual communication patterns from the Corvin vessels. They're not calling for reinforcements or trying to intercept us. Elena smiled. This was what she had hoped for. The Corvin weren't trying to stop the human attack because they didn't want to stop it. Open a channel to the lead Corvin ship, Elena ordered. A moment later, the main screen showed the bridge of a Corvin destroyer. The alien captain looked like a cross between a wolf and a bear, with gray fur and intelligent yellow eyes. Elena had studied Corvan history and knew that this species had once ruled a small but proud interstellar empire before the Zephyrians conquered them. "Human vessel," the Corvan captain said in heavily accented but clear English. "I am Commander Grakthul of the Corvan Defense Corps. You have just destroyed a major Zephyrian facility." "Yes, we have," Elena replied. "And in approximately 6 hours, 36 other Zephyrian facilities will be destroyed across the galaxy. The question is, are you going to try to stop us?" Commander Grakthul was quiet for a long moment. Elena could see other Corvan officers moving on his bridge, but none of them seemed to be preparing for battle. "Captain," Grakthul finally said, "my people have served the Zephyrians for 200 years. We have followed their orders, fought their wars, and died for their empire. In all that time, no one has ever asked us what we wanted." Elena felt her heart rate increase. This was the moment that would determine whether Operation Prometheus was just a series of raids or the beginning of something much larger. "What do you want, Commander?" "We want our freedom back. We want our children to grow up as Corvan, not as servants of the Confederation. We want to remember our own history instead of the lies they teach in their schools." Grakthul's voice grew stronger. "Most of all, we want revenge against the species that destroyed our civilization and scattered our people across the galaxy." Elena looked around her bridge, seeing hope and determination on the faces of her crew. "Commander, how many Corvan ships would follow you if you chose to join us?" "All of them," Grakthul said without hesitation. "Every Corvan in the Defense Corps has been waiting for someone to show us that the Zephyrians could be defeated. You have just done that." Over the next several hours, as Elena's ship made its way back to human space, she received similar reports from across the galaxy. The human strikes had been completely successful, but more importantly, they had triggered something the Zephyrians never expected. The oppressed species within their empire were rising up. Admiral Chen's face appeared on Elena's communication screen as she entered the hidden base at Wolf 359. Behind him, she could see a crowd of people from different species, all working together in what had once been a purely human facility. "Elena, excellent work at Tau Ceti. But that's just the beginning. Show her Dr. Kim." Dr. Kim's image replaced the Admiral's. She was standing in what looked like a massive data center, surrounded by alien technology that Elena didn't recognize. "Captain, the information we captured from the Zephyrian facilities has given us a complete picture of their empire. It's much more fragile than we thought." A galactic map appeared on Elena's screen, showing the Confederation's territory. But instead of the solid block of control Elena had expected, she saw a complex web of dependencies and vulnerabilities. "The Zephyrians control only about 30% of their empire directly, Doctor," Kim explained. "The rest is managed by client species who were conquered at different times over the past 1,000 years. Each species has been isolated from the others and told that resistance is impossible." Elena studied the display. "But if they start working together?" "Exactly. The Corvan rebellion has already spread to 6 star systems. The Hive workers have sabotaged their communication networks throughout the Eastern Spiral. The Silicon Federation has shut down their computational services for the entire Confederation military." This was better than Elena had dared to hope. The Zephyrians weren't just facing a human rebellion. They were facing the collapse of their entire empire. "What's our next move?" Elena asked. Admiral Chen's image returned to the screen. "Phase 3 of Operation Lazarus. We're going to liberate every enslaved species in Zephyrian space and give them the tools to fight for their freedom." Elena felt a thrill of anticipation. This was what humanity had been building toward for 3 years. Over the following weeks, Elena found herself commanding not just a human crew, but a mixed force of ships from a dozen different species. The Corvan provided heavy assault vessels, the Hive workers contributed their expertise in electronic warfare, and the Silicon Federation offered computational power that made human artificial intelligence look primitive. But it was the arrival of the Vorthak survivors that changed everything. Elena had thought the Vorthak were extinct, completely wiped out by the Zephyrians centuries ago. She was wrong. A small population had survived in the deepest regions of space, maintaining their warrior culture and waiting for a chance at revenge. When the Vorthak war leader, a massive creature covered in natural armor plates, announced that his people were joining the Liberation Alliance, Elena knew the Zephyrians were facing something they had never encountered before. "Human Captain," the Vorthak leader Krexval rumbled through the translation device, "your species has done what we thought impossible. You have united our enemies against them. The Vorthak will fight beside you until every Zephyrian world burns." Elena looked around the command center of the Liberation Alliance's main base. Humans worked alongside Corvan officers, hive worker, technicians calibrated weapons systems, and Silicon Federation analysts processed intelligence data. It was the most diverse military force in galactic history, united by a single purpose: the complete destruction of Zephyrian power. "Sir," reported Commander Torres, "our scouts have identified the Zephyrian home fleet. They're massing at Zephyr Prime for a final defense of their capital system." Elena studied the tactical display. The Zephyrians had recalled every available ship to protect their homeworld. It was exactly what the Liberation Alliance had hoped they would do. "Admiral," Elena said to Chen, "if we defeat their main fleet, the war is over." Chen nodded grimly. "But if we lose, the Alliance falls apart and the Zephyrians hunt down every rebel base in the galaxy. This is our one chance." Elena thought about the long journey that had brought them to this point. 3 years ago, she had been a loyal human officer serving in what she thought was a peaceful alliance. Now she was preparing to lead a fleet of liberated slaves against their former masters. "All ships," Elena broadcast to the massive fleet assembled around the hidden base, "prepare for Operation Nemesis. In 72 hours, we jump to Zephyr Prime and end this war." As Elena's ship prepared for what would be the final battle of the Liberation War, she thought about the message they were about to deliver. The Zephyrians had spent 1,000 years conquering and enslaving other species. They had believed that their victims would never unite against them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. They were about to face the combined fury of every species they had ever wronged, led by the humans they had tried to exterminate. Elena smiled as she looked at the stars. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would have a new order, one where freedom was protected by those who remembered what it was like to lose it. The battle for Zephyr Prime began at dawn, though dawn had no meaning in the depths of space. Elena watched from the bridge of her flagship as thousands of ships from dozens of species emerged from hyperspace around the Zephyrian homeworld. The Liberation Alliance fleet was the largest armada in galactic history, united by shared suffering and a common enemy. "All ships report ready for combat," announced Commander Torres. "The Corvan battle groups are in position. Vorthak assault squadrons are standing by. Hive worker electronic warfare units are jamming Zephyrian communications." Elena nodded. But her attention was focused on the massive space stations orbiting Zephyr Prime. For 1,000 years, this system had been the center of an empire built on lies and conquest. Today that empire would fall. "Admiral Chen, to all ships," came the voice over the communication system. "This is not just a battle for our freedom. This is Judgment Day for every species the Zephyrians have destroyed. We fight not just for ourselves, but for the Vorthak, the Selenites, the Crystalline Collective, and all the others who never got their chance at justice." Elena felt a chill run down her spine as she remembered the files they had captured years ago. 6 species completely destroyed, their histories erased, their cultures forgotten. The Zephyrians had thought humanity would be the 7th. "Zephyrian fleet is moving to intercept," reported Dr. Kim from the sensor station. 1,200 ships, including their entire battleship class. "They're not holding anything back." Elena watched the enemy formation approach on the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships were still beautiful, still elegant in their design. But now she saw them for what they really were: predators dressed as peacekeepers. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship," Elena ordered. A moment later, the main screen showed the bridge of a massive Zephyrian dreadnought. The alien commander looked exactly like Ambassador Kethavar had all those years ago when he first arrived at Earth. The same smooth features, the same false smile, the same condescending expression. "Human Captain," the Zephyrian admiral said, "I am Admiral Vexthor of the Confederation Navy. You're in violation of galactic law by bringing weapons into Confederation space. Surrender immediately and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. Elena almost laughed. Even now, facing the largest rebellion in their history, the Zephyrians still believed they could control the situation with words and legal technicalities. Admiral Vexthor, Elena replied. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Liberation Alliance. You are charged with genocide, slavery, and crimes against every intelligent species in this galaxy. Surrender immediately and you will receive the same mercy you showed to the Vorthak, the Selenites, and all the others. The Zephyrians' expression changed. For the first time, Elena saw uncertainty in those alien eyes. Captain, you don't understand the consequences of what you're doing. The Confederation maintains galactic peace. Without our guidance, these species will return to primitive warfare and barbarism. Elena felt anger surge through her chest. Admiral, in exactly 60 seconds, I'm going to show you what primitive barbarism really looks like. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Zephyrians fought with the desperate fury of a species that had suddenly realized their empire was crumbling. But the Liberation Alliance fought with something more powerful. The combined rage of every victim the Zephyrians had ever created. Elena's ship dove through the chaos of the battle, her human crew working alongside Corvin gunners and hive worker technicians. Around them, Vorthak assault ships rammed into Zephyrian cruisers while Silicon Federation vessels provided tactical coordination that turned the massive battle into a precisely orchestrated destruction. Captain, Dr. Kim called urgently. I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the planet's surface. They're activating some kind of planetary defense weapon. Elena's blood ran cold as she saw the energy readings on her display. This was more than a defensive weapon. This was a planet killer, powerful enough to destroy entire worlds. They're targeting Earth, Torres reported, his voice tight with shock. The weapon has enough range to hit Sol system from here. Elena realized with sick certainty what the Zephyrians were planning. If they couldn't win this battle, they would destroy humanity's homeworld as their final act of revenge. Even in defeat, they would have the satisfaction of completing the genocide they had started. But Dr. Kim was working frantically at her station, analyzing the weapon's energy patterns. Captain, I think I can modify their own weapon. The targeting system uses the same technology as their ships. If we can override the control, Elena understood immediately. Do it. As the Liberation Alliance fleet continued its assault on the Zephyrian Navy, Dr. Kim worked to turn their ultimate weapon against them. Elena watched the tactical display as the energy buildup reached critical levels. In minutes, the weapon would fire at Earth. Got it, Dr. Kim announced. I've hacked their targeting system. But Captain, I can do more than just redirect the beam. I can use their own communication network to broadcast a message across the entire galaxy. Elena's heart raced as she understood the implications. What kind of message? The weapon creates an energy discharge visible from thousands of light years away. If we fire it at specific targets and modulate the frequency, we can write words across the surface of multiple planets simultaneously. Every technological civilization in the galaxy will see it. Elena thought about the countless species throughout the galaxy who had never heard of humans or the Liberation Alliance. Species who might one day face their own choice between slavery and extinction. Do it, Elena ordered. Write our message for all the galaxy to see. The planetary weapon fired, but instead of destroying Earth, its beam struck the surface of Zephyr Prime itself. Then it struck the other major Zephyrian worlds throughout their former empire. Each strike carved massive letters into the planetary surfaces, letters that glowed with nuclear fire and would remain visible for millennia. Across the galaxy, on every world with telescopes or sensor arrays, beings looked up at the stars and saw humanity's message written in letters of flame across the Zephyrian worlds. We remember, we endure, we do not forgive. But the message was more than words. It was proof that the mighty Zephyrian Confederation, rulers of this sector of the galaxy for 1,000 years, had been utterly defeated by their own victims. As the last Zephyrian ship surrendered or fled into the darkness of deep space, Elena found herself standing on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the remnants of an empire. The orbital stations around Zephyr Prime were burning. The planet's surface was scarred with humanity's message. The 1,000-year reign of the Confederation was over. Captain, Torres reported, we're receiving surrender requests from Zephyrian installations throughout the galaxy. Their client species are declaring independence. Their military forces are laying down weapons. Elena nodded, but she felt no satisfaction in victory. Too many had died for her to feel joy. Earth had lost 10 billion people. The other human colonies had suffered massive casualties. The Corvan, the Vorthak, and all the other Liberation Alliance species had paid a terrible price for their freedom. Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. All ships. This is Admiral Chen. The war is over. The Zephyrian Confederation has ceased to exist. But our work is just beginning. Elena understood. Destroying the old order was only the first step. Now they had to build something better. Over the following months, Elena found herself serving as one of the founding officers of the Galactic Liberation Fleet. The GLF was unlike any military force in galactic history. Its mission wasn't conquest or control, but protection and prevention. Never again, Elena said as she stood before the Galactic Council, representing the new alliance of free species. Never again will one species be allowed to dominate others through deception and false friendship. Never again will civilizations be harvested like crops by predators disguised as peacekeepers. The Terran doctrine, as it came to be known, was simple. Any species that attempted to conquer or enslave another would face the immediate intervention of the Liberation Fleet. The galaxy would have peace, but it would be peace enforced by those who remembered the cost of freedom. Elena looked out at the assembled representatives of dozens of species, all equal partners in the new galactic order. Humans sat beside Corvan warriors, Vorthak survivors, and freed hive workers. Even some Zephyrians were present, members of their species who had rejected their empire's crimes and chosen to build a better future. The Zephyrians thought we would forgive, Elena continued. They thought we would forget. They thought we would eventually accept our place as their servants and slaves. They were wrong about all of that, but they taught us something valuable. They taught us that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. As Elena returned to her ship after the council meeting, she thought about the long journey that had brought them to this point, from naive newcomers to galactic civilization, to victims of genocide, to liberators of an entire sector of the galaxy. Humanity had earned its place among the stars the hard way. They had paid for it with blood and loss and years of desperate struggle, but they had also proven something important to every species in the galaxy.